So today we're moving on to have a look at football and particularly players being quite a powerful influence in terms of culture. In the dial a little bit, maybe moving people away from your inconsequential feelings that you mentioned a minute ago.
I instantly thought, no one as big as some of the other figures that we've spoken about in the past instantly sprung to mind, and that kind of struck me as a bit of a problem almost, or as kind of like well, that's a shame, because there are so many massive figures that I think a lot of people now kind of use as more like he'd be a great ad campaign. Do you know what I mean? Most footballers now spring to mind as a great ad campaign ahead of, hey, that guy did something really meaningful. And I think they don't maybe realise like how many big influential people there are in the world of football that are probably really famous because they did something kind of politically or socially important back in the day. You know, you're talking Socrates or Bill Shankly. Like Bill Shankly is often used as a great image for Liverpool, right? There are so few people that acknowledge it's not only because of obviously he's more influential because of the trophies he won and it helps his success, but the messages that he put out there were pivotal to the success that Liverpool then had. I think that's what made it so important. And obviously, like in Europe, there's people like Maradona who are, you know, essentially demigods in Naples because of their own political or social influence in those places.
Well, I think now is the time to bring in our guest today, David Wheeler. The thing to really point out is the first ever PFA sustainability champion. So, long time advocate for sustainability in sport, and we'll explore that a little bit in a minute. David, welcome to episode.
Thank you. 2. Yeah, good to be here.
So, I guess kicking off, how did this all start for you? Because you are really well known now within the world of sport and sustainability as an amazing climate advocate. So where did that kind of start? You kick off?
It's hard to pinpoint, really. Like, I think, obviously, so growing up, I was always very outdoorsy and loved sport and being outdoors, going on walks. Politically, like probably sort of late school, early college age, and I had a group of friends who were very socially aware, politically aware, and environmentally conscious. But I think it probably wasn't till sort of my early to mid 20s where I was just like, I think I'd watched a few documentaries and read a few articles and been like, oh, this is really bad. This is a really serious situation. And yeah, I think it's just escalated from there. And I think my initial desire was to create some sort of charity to push football to be more sustainable, because I think if I was going to work in anything, it would have made sense to have been in football, because that's what I was known for. That's what, the space I was in. And then kind of realised that there were a few organisations already doing that, like Football for Future, like Pledgeball. So I instead kind of decided, partly through lack of time, like in my own life, having studying alongside it to be a sports psychologist, was that I was like, oh, maybe I just lend my voice to those organisations, and it kind of just spiraled from there into conferences and various projects over the years.
And how has that kind of morphed into what it is today? So what, in terms of using your platform as a professional player?
I think it's being a little bit unapologetic about being vocal about it. It's ironic that we speak about it now, because I've recently retired and gone through a personal period of a lot of upheaval, and haven't really been that vocal on anything for a bit. But yeah, I think it was just being vocal about it, both in my football club, in the dressing room, but also on social media, through club channels, and within the club, saying to people that work to the club, look, things need to be better. Like, they're not good enough. How do we fix it? How do we work together to make it better? So yeah, it's kind of finding that courage to be outspoken, but also finding the courage to not feel like you're putting other people out, if that makes sense. Like, you're trying to make people feel a part of it and bring them along for the ride.
Did you find it was much easier to get kind of private support than it obviously was public? So there are a lot of people obviously who'll say, "I think it was a great idea," or but I'll do something personal, but I obviously, I'm not going to be one of those footballers alongside you. Or what was the kind of reaction in the actual group of players?
Yeah. I mean, like, I can only really describe it in, it's like a soft version of, when someone says, "Oh, well, or they'll be really nice to you on a one-to-one basis."
Right.
But then in a group setting, it's like they need to feel the need to look after themselves, so they'll either like make fun of it, or they'll like belittle the position or whatever, or just overtly be intimidating towards me. Sort of like a self-preservation thing, I guess. But then in private, it's often I really respect what you do, how you carry yourself. I believe in the cause and all that kind of stuff. So, but when it's a much more positive environment, it can be great, because then you can get other football players involved and make them realise that it's not scary at all, and it's something that other people in their world will also feel will also be proud of them for.
The other aspect, obviously, that you'll know as a sports psychologist is how key to a lot of players things like habits are. And obviously then how to most human beings habits are a massive part of what they do every day, and almost most people are quite unconscious of it. But therefore how it is not easier, but it is almost more straightforward in a football club to implement some of these stuff, because a lot of football players on a daily basis are told, be here this time, eat the lunch, put it in there, do this thing, and in many ways, if you change that habit, because the club can do however they want, you can implement these things maybe slightly more effectively, at least would be the argument.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a learning curve for me, because I think for a while I was butting my head against a brick wall saying, like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, this is why. But actually, when you make it easy for people to do the right thing, they will generally do the right thing.
Right.
Using a simple example of like getting reusable soap dispensers in the showers, because it's just always loads of empty plastic like shower bottles on the floor most days.
Right.
And you just think, well, if you just did that and did that through club channels, then it just solves the issue to a large extent. But then it's also making the case on with the club as well to do the right thing, and sometimes that's at a cost.
I mean, you also looked at one of the most powerful things that the players can do, which is actually taking your money, your pension, and moving it away from fossil fuel investment, didn't you?
Yeah, I was doing that. Well, it's kind of like an ongoing thing, I suppose. It's I think this is the thing, again, that I realised through experience with pensions, is that it kind of goes hand in hand. That how long you have to wait for them seems like the amount of, like, almost it goes hand in hand with the amount of time it takes to change anything substantial within them, especially if you're doing it on behalf of a whole body of people. Like, you move one piece and there's like 10 other pieces that
explain this and break it down a little bit. And just because obviously I haven't briefed Laurence around this, so you were trying to get the money to be removed away from fossil fuel investment to green projects, greener investments.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously investment in fossil fuels is going to be one of many, many, many different things that are invested in as part of the fund. But my contention was that we shouldn't be investing in fossil fuels, much like we shouldn't be investing in weapons, we shouldn't be investing in tobacco, anything like that, especially without the consent of members. And kind of my point of view was that it should be an opt-in to invest in those things rather than an opt-out. Because I think that at one point there was an argument to say that all members should be consulted, but my argument was, well, what's the point of being like a steward of a pension if you're not doing things that are... Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah, that are not only for the benefit of the fund and the investors, but also for the benefit more generally to society.
I wanted to move on to have a look at the recent kind of FIFA Pro report about the impact of heat and extreme weather events. Are you ready?
Yes.
FIFA Pro is a global union representing around 65,000 professional footballers worldwide. Their 24-25 report includes a new section, this is brand new, on extreme heat and climate impacts on the game. It found that FIFA's current heat guidelines haven't been updated in nearly 20 years and are less protective than those used in many other sports. So during the World Cup in the US, FIFA Pro has identified 4 matches that should have, this is the Club World Cup, that should have been rescheduled or cancelled due to unsafe heat conditions. I mean, we all saw images of the referee, was that in Copper, wasn't it, passing out. We all saw the frequent heat breaks. Looking ahead to the World Cup 2026, the report found that 6 of the 16 host cities face conditions classed as extreme risk for heat-related illness.
Yeah, I think this is quite a good example, FIFA, of, an organisation that with no checks and balances just gets completely carried away with themselves and just seems to be completely detached from any responsibility to anything, as far as I'm aware, as far as I can see. It's completely obvious to me that there should be some international governmental oversight of FIFA, because they're not operating in the best interests of either the sport or the environment. So, yeah, it's clear to anyone that a tournament of this size should not be played over more than, say, 2 neighbouring small countries. And in the US, you could make quite a solid argument for it only being in 2 states.
It's kind of the practicality of it as well, right? Like, how am I supposed to go and watch a game in LA and New York? Or even, you can use LA and New York as an example, but even halfway is a long way across America. Even a quarter of the way, if you've driven it, is a long way across America. I think a lot of people aren't taking into account that there are big issues now, or going to be big issues for a lot of fans who are going to get stuck in different places. And actually, the thing most people are overlooking is the last World Cup didn't really have that great of an atmosphere. And that is no judgment on anyone in Qatar or any of the people there. It's more of a judgment on the people who put it together, that, they weren't able to make this the ultimate kind of festival atmosphere that they sold it on.
It's inevitable when your first, second, third, fourth and fifth priority are profit.
It's weird because in sport you tend to love those people who are kind of the most fallible, but it cannot be a forced or manufactured thing. So the second that you start showing people I'm fallible, the second they kind of start to pull against you almost, because they're like, oh, this guy's trying to create his own story. I think the thing that, like, I don't know, we've all got kids here, and David, you and I think got kids exactly the same age. But the real thing that, like, is so hard to express about sports is the inherent lessons within sports that you don't name them. You can only do it and learn. And it's kind of the same with this, right? Is you can only do it and learn. It's, the advocacy. I think a lot of people think the second that you start doing one of these pledges or whatever it is, if you're not a wholly, engrossed advocate, then you're not part of it. And actually, it is kind of inherent within the message that you're doing it,
Yeah, and I think, like a lot of things, like good leadership, you have to, and over the years I've realised this, is that you have to tap into vulnerability. Like, you have to be vulnerable to be a good leader. And I think we see, and unfortunately our system promotes people to the top of organisations that are not good leaders, are not vulnerable, and ultimately probably quite traumatized people in early life who are now still living out that trauma as leaders now, and it's damaging everyone else.
Speaking of leaders, did you ever have any kind of managers come along and kind of, come on, mate, we're trying to get promotion here. I'm trying to get my message over. The least you could do is just shh.
Yeah, no managers actually, believe it or not. Like I think that almost definitely will have happened at some point to other players, but yeah, no, not really. I did get a talking to once when in a column that I was writing that I like basically put my support for refugees. I think it was around the time of the Brexit, maybe around the time of Brexit or leading up to Brexit.
Yeah.
Where it was like the rhetoric was quite nasty, well, probably very similar to what it is now, to be honest. Like very nasty, very a lot of dog whistle racism, sometimes overt racism going on, and particular people saying that we should use the military to essentially kill them in the war, like gun them down in the water.
Yeah.
And I just publicly wrote in the local paper that I fully support refugees and their right to claim safe haven in England. And so I just wrote, because I think I'd heard that a group of fans were going to have a banner on the stand saying that. And so I was like, well, I just want to show my support for that. And I got quite a lot of heat for it, and just to say, like, maybe just steer clear of the more politically like hot topics right now, like for the just till it quietens down a bit, because there were people that were saying that they're just like, well, they want their money back for their season ticket and things like that, and so the club were genuinely having to look at it from a business point of view and a profit point of view.
And it's kind of like what we were talking about at the start is, I think, Socrates was very clear about what he wanted people to do. He had one central message, which was go out there and vote. Maradona, I think was, whether you agree with what he did or not in that World Cup, was very clear why he felt okay doing that. And you can even go to Naples now, and every Neapolitan man or woman will tell you that was done for the people back in Argentina and, the Falklands, because they wanted to make a political message against England. They didn't care who they upset. And then obviously there's also then Bill Shankly, who he had a very clear message, which not only then went throughout Liverpool and one of the most successful teams is the most successful team in British history, but one of the most successful teams in British football, but also then it was the ethos that he went on to build something around. And what I find quite interesting about all of those is, it's difficult, and I don't remember anyone now writing. Shankly had a couple of people who said, not quite sure about this one, Bill. No one remembers those guys. No one remembers those people.
But I think I think it is a little bit of a common thing in sustainability, and I think it's a common thing in most most groups of people and efforts and organizations, is that, like, there's this worry that speaking about politics is going to confuse the issue and it's going to muddy the waters and stuff. But they're so inextricably linked. Like, I think you need to be across it. Like, I think you need to be across both, because the climate crisis is going to turbocharge migration. So, yeah, it's going to
really that. In today's world, we just get exposed to those things that are echo chambers within our own units. And so having somebody within, football just express their own opinion, doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but just having that alternative view to consider is amazing, because it breaks into that kind of that completely manipulated world in which we live. There's a stat around the proportion of people it takes simply adopting a new social norm. So not even speaking out about it. You don't even need to find those safe spaces. It could be just doing things at home, but it could also be talking with your family, with your fellow fans, but it's literally just 25% of people. And so it's not a big thing. It's much lower, obviously, if you're standing up and shouting about it on the street, or as you said, speaking out about it, whereas 3.5% of people. But that triggers an entire cultural shift. So it doesn't take all that many people. And in fact, when you look at the stats, and I have got a little quiz to end on, that completely talks to this point.
Good.
Love them. But that illustrates the collective impact of football fans themselves. And I mean, the other nice thing I heard about this was, if you aren't somebody who wants to make those changes at home, actually just the conversations themselves have one more impact than you realise. There's that thing of, if you carry a message to 3 people, and those 3 people carry that same message to 3 new people, and so on and so on, it takes just 2 to 3 weeks for that message to travel across the world. And, these are all people who know each other, that's the point. It's just really powerful. But it doesn't take many. But if we all keep feeling as though we can't have an impact and we're inconsequential on our own, nothing will change. Are you ready for this quiz then?
Go for it.
So this illustrates the collective impact of football fans. And this is just directly on emissions. This doesn't even touch the ripple effect. So I'm going to read you out a stadium and a switch. And you have to tell me how many emissions that saves in terms of the number of cars that takes to the road. Okay, you ready? So we have got Anfield in there as well. So first of all, an Adams Park crowd switching to using like refill stations, so rather than getting new plastic bottles and things like that. So that's got capacity of 10,000. So one capacity stadium, all switching to doing this and not buying the plastic bottles, using your refill shower gels that you talked about before. How many cars do you think that, worth of emissions do you think that saves? It's worth, same as taking how many cars off the road?
But David would know this off the top of his head, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. It'd be pretty amazing if he did.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 50.
Sounds quite... I mean, is that quite low or is that quite high?
It's always a quiz, man.
Good point. I'm going to go higher. I just got to say higher, haven't I? Just 51.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't actually guess. Otherwise, it's
80.
629.
Oh my.
Right. See, you can tell there I was influenced there by the so I'm going to blame David.
Influenced by the guy that knew absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Okay.
I trusted you, David.
That's wild. So that was what, 600? 600.
629 cars.
How long would the cars be off the road? Just
So
forever.
Which they're off forever. Right, we're moving to Anfield now. So 60,000 capacity. If everyone gave up flying for 1 year, how many cars would that equate to take off the road?
Oh,
Liverpool fans fly a long way as well, so because we've got all that European football.
that's true.
We haven't Liverpool fans specifically here.
Okay, I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna go at 2,400. Probably more. No, 10,000.
I'm going to go 20,000.
But David won that one. It is 26,100.
There you go. I didn't think about the multiplication. It's great though, isn't it?
See, this is the thing. We just assume we can't have an impact, or it's much lower. So finally, then Wembley, 90,000 fans. Yeah, this is touching upon food waste from last time. So if everyone composted their food waste, so rather than just chuck it in the main landfill, how many cars would that equate to take off the road?
Tricky. 30,000.
I like the way you're looking as though you're adding up in your head, Laurence.
I'm trying to work out roughly the proportion of the previous numbers to work out if there's like a scale that we're going on here. I'm going to say 75,000.
You've gone way too high there. You've completely busted everything from before. This is 2,500 cars. But, I will point out,
a lot of cars.
the drum will be killing us, that this is not reducing food waste. It's just taking it out of your normal bin and putting it in the
Do you know what would make Wembley even greener?
Yeah. That's why I got thrown off with the food waste thing, yeah.
What would make Wembley even greener would be if they could just fix that go-stop system outside after the games. That would just make everyone want to travel by train there a lot more. Just fix the go-stop system, that's all. It's that simple.
Right, well, I think we're ending on that note. So,
just a piece of advice.
One final question for you. If football could do one thing, and when I say football, I mean that encompasses community, leagues, governing body, clubs. What is that one thing you'd like to see in the next year?
For me, it would be to have free travel on public transport with your match ticket.
Well, what a lovely guy, huh? You can tell when people really care about, what they're saying and doing, and that makes a difference.
A massive difference. And also just, I like the way he puts it. He simplifies it in a way that means that you step away from what you normally accept and realise what he's actually saying.
I think the main thing for me that I'm coming to the conclusion of is, and it's not, and I mean this in the nicest way, there's a slightly English issue around talking about these kind of things. And, when an English person speaks in a slightly different way, you really notice it for a start. Yeah. And I don't mean that in like it's not a knock on English people. I just think in general, we're not great at having these kind of mass change conversations. Maybe because sometimes mass change has gone against us. But then also how it would be interesting to see other examples in football where, what happens in Japan on a normal match day, what happens in South Korea on a normal match day, what happens in any of these, I've got a friend who's in Indonesia at the moment. What happens there, and kind of what's the collective mindset, and why is it so different, or why would it be so different? It would be quite interesting to see, but also it's really interesting to hear from people who very clearly went against the grain at one point and have thrived, as opposed to being pushed down from that. Because I think that's not always the story.
Definitely. Well, there's that saying, isn't there? The radicals of today will be the heroes of tomorrow. It reminds you that you can step against the grain, and what we accept as being the right way in which our system works is not. We need to think about it and challenge it.